It's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease, long-term effects. Human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. We can think about our problems and turn on those chemicals. That means then our thoughts could make us sick.
Come on in, let's talk about it. Come on in, let's talk about it. Make it make sense.
Looking at the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, the neuroscientist, epigenetics researcher.
Right, brings it all together with quantum physics too. Really powerful stuff.
So the mission for this deep dive, for everyone listening, what is it?
Well, it's really to get a handle on how these patterns we have, these ingrained ways of thinking and feeling, how they affect us, our well-being, and more importantly, how we can actually intentionally create positive change, not just wish for it.
Right, because his research basically says, look, your thoughts, they're not just random noise. They can make you sick.
But they can also make you well, heal you even.
Which is huge. Okay, so let's get into it. He talks about this thing called the habitual construct, or the habit of you. What's that?
Think of it as, well, it's basically your autopilot system. Yeah, all those automatic thoughts, behaviors, feelings that you just do without thinking, built up over time, just pure repetition.
Okay, like driving a car maybe. At first you focus like crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then eventually you barely notice you're doing it. Your body just knows. That's the habit of you in action.
Got it. Now, he also says we often start our day by basically reliving the past. How does that work?
It's kind of wild when you think about it. So many of us, first thing in the morning, what do?
Reach for the phone. Think about yesterday's problems.
Bingo. You start thinking about your problems, and neurologically, those problems are just old circuits firing. Memories.
Tied to people, things, places.
Right. Your brain is literally a record of the past. So the second you recall those memories, boom, you're mentally in the past.
And it's not just the facts, it's the feelings too, right?
That's the key. Emotions are the end product, the chemical residue of past experiences. So thinking those problem memories brings back the feeling, maybe frustration, sadness, whatever it was.
Okay.
And think about it. Your state of being is how you think and how you feel. So if you start the day thinking past problems and feeling past emotions, your whole being is anchored back there.
Which leads to what he calls a predictable future, because you're starting from the past.
Exactly. If you believe thoughts create your life, but your feelings, which are rooted in the past, are driving your thoughts, well, your feelings have become your way of thinking.
So you're just thinking past thoughts.
Essentially, yeah. You're thinking within the limits of those old emotions.
Yeah.
And so you're pretty much set up to create more of the same. The past just keeps repeating itself in your future.
It's a loop. And those routine behaviors, like you said, grabbing the phone, that keeps us stuck.
Absolutely. Think about it. Check messages, email, social media, news.
Sure.
You're immediately plugging your brain right back into all the familiar people, places, problems.
Triggering the same old feeling.
Right. The same emotional reactions. You're reaffirming your current reality, keeping yourself boxed in by the familiar.
And it's the physical stuff too, isn't it? Like same side of the bed, same breakfast routine.
Totally. Same road to work, dealing with the same people who push your buttons in the exact same way. All these little unconscious habits reinforce the program.
It becomes so automatic.
So automatic that, yeah, we kind of lose our free will to these subconscious programs.
That sounds a bit bleak. Losing free will.
It can sound that way, but understanding it is actually empowering. Dr. Dispenza points out, by the time we're about 35, a huge chunk, like 95% of who we are.
95%.
Yeah. It's just this memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, habits, beliefs, attitudes. It's all running like a computer program in the background.
Wow. So that conscious 5% that says, I want to change, is up against this massive subconscious program.
Pretty much. It's why change can feel so hard sometimes. You're fighting against this deeply ingrained system.
So how do we even get access to that system? How do we change the program?
Well, that's where the analytical mind comes in. It's kind of like the gatekeeper between the conscious and subconscious. And meditation, this is where it's really key. Dispenza emphasizes it because it helps you get beyond that analytical mind.
How?
By practicing meditation, you learn to change your brain waves, slow them down, move from that active beta state into alpha, even theta.
And that lets you bypass the gatekeeper.
Exactly. It lets you access the subconscious operating system. That's where the real deep-seated beliefs and programs are stored and where you can start to make lasting changes.
That makes sense. And he also makes this point, which I find really interesting, that we don't have to wait for a crisis to change.
Oh, absolutely. So often people only make big changes after, a trauma, a diagnosis, some major loss.
A wake-up call.
Right. But his whole thing is, why wait for suffering? We can learn and change in states of pain, sure, but we can also learn and evolve in states of joy, inspiration.
We don't need to hit rock bottom.
We really don't. We can choose to grow from a place of positive emotion, too.
Okay, let's talk about trauma for a second, because that often is a catalyst. He talks about how we get stuck rehearsing it.
Yeah, there's a strong neurological component. When something really emotionally intense happens, especially negative,
The brain pays attention.
big time. The stronger the emotion, the more the brain goes, whoa, what caused that?
Yeah.
It takes this detailed snapshot. Yeah. That becomes a long-term memory.
And then...
Then people can get stuck thinking within those very specific neural pathways that were created during the trauma and feeling within the chemical boundaries of those intense emotions.
So you're constantly re-triggering the feeling, not just remembering the event.
Exactly. It's like the event is over, but you keep firing and wiring those circuits, keep producing those stress chemicals just by thinking about it.
And this ties into emotional refractory periods.
Yeah, that's the idea that an emotional reaction might normally last, say, a few minutes. But if you keep thinking about it, keep feeling it,
You stretch it out.
right? You keep it going for hours or days. That's a mood. Keep it going for weeks or months. Now it's a temperament. Years. And it can become part of your personality. Like, oh, they're just an angry person or they're always anxious. It started as a reaction, but it got prolonged. Learning to shorten that refractory period is huge.
But isn't there a survival reason we remember bad things?
Oh, definitely. Stress hormones basically tag experiences as important, telling your brain, pay attention, avoid this in the future. It's a survival mechanism.
Makes sense.
The problem is, many of us end up living in survival mode almost constantly. Dispenza estimates maybe 70% of our lives. We're always anticipating the worst based on past bad experiences.
So we condition our bodies into fear.
Pretty much. We're living biologically in the past, expecting threats that aren't actually there right now.
And he even says we can get addicted to negative emotions. How does that work? It sounds so backward.
It does, doesn't it? But think about the energy that comes with strong emotions like anger or fear. It's a rush.
Okay, yeah, adrenaline.
Right. So unconsciously, people can get used to that chemical rush. They might even start, without realizing it, seeking out problems or focusing on limitations.
Just to feel something, even
Yep.
if it's bad.
Exactly. Just to feel that familiar surge, because it's predictable. It becomes a subconscious addiction.
Wow. Okay. And this leads to the idea that the body is the unconscious mind.
This is so crucial. Your body. It honestly doesn't know the difference between a real-life experience that's causing an emotion and an emotion you're creating just by thinking.
Seriously.
Seriously, if you're constantly thinking about some past stressful event, feeling the fear or anger, your body believes it's living through that event right now, over and over again.
So the body is literally stuck in the past, chemically.
That's a great way to put it. It's conditioned to the past.
Which must make change feel really uncomfortable then, because the body wants that familiar, even if it's negative.
Precisely. When you decide consciously, okay, I'm going to think differently, feel differently, you're breaking those old neural connections. You're stepping out of the familiar chemical state.
And the body goes.
The body freaks out a little. It's like, whoa, this feels weird. Where's my usual dose of cortisol? Where is the suffering? It feels unfamiliar, so it feels uncomfortable, even unsafe.
So it tries to pull you back.
Yeah, it starts sending signals to the brain, doubts, worries, those same old limiting thoughts. This isn't working. You can't do this. Just go back to feeling bad. At least we know that.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the body becomes the mind? How does that play out day to day?
Sure. So when the body gets repeatedly conditioned into, say, a state of resentment or anxiety, that state becomes so automatic, so deeply memorized, that the body itself can start demanding that chemical state. It can actually override your conscious mind's intention to feel happy or peaceful.
So the body's craving for the old feeling is stronger than your wish to change.
It can be,
Yeah.
yes. It prefers the known misery over the unknown possibility of joy. It's like, as Dispenza says, the servant, the body, has become the master. It's running the show based on past programming.
That's a powerful image. But the flip side is, he says, we can consciously create the future from the unknown. How do we start that?
It begins with a clear intention, deciding what thoughts, what feelings, what behaviors belong to your desired future self.
Okay, got the intention. Then what?
Then comes mental rehearsal. But not just passive daydreaming, it's about really engaging. You mentally walk through your desired future, but with such focus, such presence.
That the brain thinks it's real.
Exactly. You get so involved in the inner experience that your brain starts laying down new neural pathways, literally installing the neurological hardware as if the event has already happened.
So you're building the brain circuits for your future before it happens.
You got it. You're getting the brain ready.
And this mental rehearsal, he calls it priming the brain. It's about making it automatic.
Right. The initial rehearsal builds the hardware. Consistent rehearsal turns that hardware into a software program. It makes it more automatic, more familiar.
And crucially, you have to feel it, right?
Right.
Teach the body the emotion.
Yes. This is probably the most important part. You have to teach your body emotionally what that future feels like. You generate the feeling of abundance or health or joy now.
So you're not waiting for the external event to create the feeling?
You're creating the feeling first.
Yeah.
That's the shift from the old Newtonian model, cause and effect, waiting for something outside to change you inside.
To the quantum model.
For the quantum model, where you cause and effect. You change your internal state, your energy, your emotions first, and that draws the experience to you. You feel grateful before the good stuff happens.
That's moving from being a victim of circumstances
Right. I feel bad because of this thing that happened.
to being a creator of your reality.
Exactly. My thoughts and feelings are actively shaping my life. It's taking back your power.
So practically, how do we break that cycle? Thought, chemical, body gets trained. Vague, repeat.
Awareness is the absolute first step. You have to notice the pattern. Ah, there's that thought again. And yep, there's the familiar knot in my stomach.
Catching yourself in the act.
Precisely. Once you're aware, you have a choice.
Yeah.
You can interrupt it. You can say, nope, not going down that road, and consciously choose a different thought, a different feeling. It takes practice, obviously.
And the environment. That plays a big role too, right? Our surroundings trigger us.
Hugely. Think about it. Every person, every place, every object in your familiar life has neurological networks associated with it in your brain.
Linked to past experiences and emotions.
Exactly. So just seeing your boss or walking into your house or hearing a certain song can automatically trigger those old thought patterns and feelings, often completely unconsciously.
And some people almost use their environment to stay stuck.
Yeah, it's like they need their difficult coworker or the stressful news report to reaffirm their addiction to feeling, say, judgmental or victimized. They need that external hit to feel that familiar negative emotion.
So the goal is to be greater than our environment. What does that mean practically?
It means not letting your external world automatically dictate your internal state. It means being able to maintain your chosen state of being, your peace, your joy, whatever it is, regardless of what's happening around you.
And meditation is the tool for that.
It's a primary tool, yes. Because what do you do in meditation?
You close your eyes, sit still.
Right. You close your eyes, reducing sensory input from the outside world by a huge amount. You train your body to be still, not reacting to every itch or impulse.
You're disconnecting from the environment.
You're disconnecting. You're telling your body, you're not in charge right now, I am. You're reducing the constant stream of external information, firing up those old networks.
And then what happens inside?
When you quiet the outside world and the body, your attention naturally goes inward. You become more aware of, well, your thoughts, your internal landscape.
But surely the body fights back, wants its usual emotional fix.
Oh, absolutely. The body, that unconscious mind, starts sending out signals. Hey, time to worry about finances. Remember when so-and-so annoyed you? It craves those familiar chemical states.
So your mind wanders.
Your attention drifts. That's totally normal. The practice is noticing when it drifts, becoming aware that you're back, thinking about the past or anticipating some stressful future, and gently, firmly bringing your attention back.
Back to the present, or the intention.
Back to the present moment, back to your intention for the meditation. Every time you do that, you're breaking the automatic link. You're strengthening your conscious will. You're reconditioning the body.
It's like building a muscle, willpower over program.
Exactly. And when you practice this enough, something amazing happens. The body eventually starts to surrender.
And that's when he talks about liberation of energy.
Yes. When the body finally lets go of clinging to those old emotional states, the energy that was bound up in them gets liberated. It's like moving from being stuck as a particle defined by the body and its past, to being more wave, more pure energy and potential.
Freeing yourself from those chains.
That's the feeling. Freedom from the habitual self.
This sounds a lot like developing metacognition, that ability to watch your own thoughts.
It is. Metacognition is becoming aware of your thoughts, observing them without necessarily identifying with them or believing them.
Realizing a thought is just a thought, not necessarily truth.
Exactly. And considering, the statistics that maybe 90% of our thoughts today are the same ones we had yesterday.
Wow, 90%?
Yeah, roughly. If you're not aware of those thoughts, you just keep thinking them, keep feeling the same way, keep making the same choices, and wondering why your life isn't changing.
And our frontal lobe is key for this.
Yep.
Observing ourselves.
Yes, the frontal lobe is like the CEO of the brain. It allows that higher order awareness, the ability to reflect on ourselves, to decide if a thought serves us or not. Developing metacognition means you stop going unconscious during the day.
You catch yourself before you slip into the old program.
Right. You become conscious of your unconscious self.
So meditation is really about getting to know yourself intimately.
Very intimately. You become so familiar with your old thoughts, your automatic behaviors, your default emotions, that you can finally say, okay, I see you. Time to retire you.
And then you can consciously wire in the new ones.
That's the process. You have to know the old self to create the new self.
He uses that garden analogy, which I think is helpful.
Oh yeah, the garden. It's perfect. First, you got to do the weeding.
Pull out the old beliefs, the limiting thoughts.
Get rid of the rocks, those emotional blocks.
Yeah.
Unlearn the old patterns. Then you have to prepare the soil, make the mind fertile and receptive.
And then you plant the new seeds, the new intentions, thoughts, feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't just throw new seeds onto rocky, weed-infested ground and expect them to grow. There's an unlearning phase first.
And that unlearning, stepping out of the familiar,
Yeah,
that can feel uncomfortable, right?
for sure. Often, it's when you push yourself into slightly uncomfortable situations that your programmed reactions really show up loud and clear.
Because the autopilot wants to take over.
Right. The key is, instead of reacting automatically, you notice the reaction. You engage consciously. There's that urge to get defensive, or there's that desire to run away. You stay present with the discomfort.
And choose differently.
And choose differently. That's how you break the habit of the old self. You have to unlearn before you can effectively relearn or reinvent.
So it's that two-step process, unfiring and unwiring the old,
Breaking those connections.
and then refiring and rewiring the new.
Building the new pathways.
Yeah.
You're unmemorizing the body from the old emotional state and rememorizing, reconditioning it to a new mind, a new emotion.
It's work. It takes repetition.
It absolutely does. Which brings us to another really critical point Dr. Dispenza makes. Insights alone don't cut it.
The aha moment isn't enough.
Exactly. Those moments are great. Understanding why you are the way you are is valuable. But that understanding, that insight, is essentially inert. It doesn't do anything by itself.
It's potential, but not change.
Right. True transformation only happens when you take that insight and apply it, when you practice the new way of thinking, feeling, and being consistently.
And he warns about using insights as excuses, right?
Oh, definitely. It's a subtle trap. You gain some understanding, it's because of my childhood, or I have this chemical tendency, and then you use that insight.
As a reason to stay stuck.
Yeah, as a justification for why you can't change. Well, this is just how I am because of XYZ. It gives you permission to stay in the familiar pattern, even if it's painful.
So the insight becomes a fancy label for the limitation instead of a tool to overcome it.
You nailed it. It rationalizes inaction.
So even if things change externally, maybe the stressful job ends or the difficult relationship is over if you haven't done the internal work.
You'll likely just find new reasons to feel the old ways. You'll recreate the same patterns in a new setting because the internal program hasn't changed. The change has to start inside.
Which really drives home why understanding yourself, the neurochemistry, the patterns is so empowering.
It really is. Knowing how it works gives you the levers to change it. And this ties into his distinction between living in survival versus living in creation.
Survival mode is that stress response state.
Yeah, driven by stress hormones. Living in constant fight or flight or freeze, always anticipating threat.
Versus creation.
Creation is operating from those elevated emotions, gratitude, joy, inspiration, love, wholeness. It's a fundamentally different neurochemical state.
And the science on chronic stress, living in survival, it's pretty clear, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's well documented. Those stress hormones, like cortisol, when they're coursing through your system long term, They downregulate genes, they suppress the immune system, they create the conditions for disease.
And the kicker is, we can trigger that whole cascade just with our thoughts.
That's the unique human predicament, isn't it?
Hmm.
We can turn on the stress response just by thinking about our problems, worrying about the future, reliving past hurts. We don't need an actual lion chasing us.
And the emotions tied to survival are generally
Really, the more negative contracted ones,
Eh.
anger, aggression, fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, envy, jealousy, they narrow our focus onto the problem, the threat. It's an altered state of consciousness focused on separation and lack.
makes it hard to see possibilities when you're stuck there.
Very hard. There's that negativity bias. Your brain is primed to look for what's wrong.
Okay, let's shift to epigenetics. You mentioned it earlier. How does our internal state actually talk to our genes?
All right, so epigenetics basically shows that our genes aren't necessarily our destiny. The old view was very deterministic. You have the gene for X, you'll get X.
But it's more complex.
Much more. Epigenetics studies how environmental signals, and that includes the chemical signals from our emotions and thoughts, can actually tell our genes to switch on or off.
Without changing the DNA code itself?
Exactly. It changes the expression of the gene. And the research suggests that maybe less than 5% of diseases are purely down to faulty genes alone.
Wow, only 5%.
Maybe even less. The vast majority, over 95%, are related to lifestyle, environment, stress, and how those factors signal our genes.
So our choices, our thoughts, our feelings are constantly sending instructions to our cells.
Constantly. And think about it. The end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So Dispenza asks, can we create the emotion ahead of the experience? Can we signal the gene ahead of the environment?
By cultivating those elevated emotions.
Precisely. And his research is showing, remarkably, yes, we can.
What kind of results are they seeing?
Really stunning stuff.
Yeah.
In studies where people practice these meditations intensely for just 4 days,
4 days, that's it.
just 4 days, they've seen significant upregulation, meaning turning on of genes associated with things like suppressing cancer growth, growing new neurons in the brain.
Neurogenesis.
Yeah, signaling stem cells for repair, reducing oxidative stress, improving immune function. It's quite incredible.
That's, wow, directly influencing beneficial genes through meditation and elevated emotion.
It seems so. And then there's the work on telomeres.
Those caps on our chromosomes
Right.
related to aging.
Exactly. Longer telomeres are associated with longer, healthier life. In one study, over 60 days of consistent meditation, a significant number of participants, 74%, showed a measurable lengthening of their telomeres.
Lengthening, so potentially reversing biological aging.
That's what the data suggests for a good portion of them. It points to a profound ability to influence our fundamental biology through our internal state.
It really shows we have more power than we think.
So much more. We're not just victims of our genes or our past. We have this amazing capacity for change, for healing, for creating something new right inside us.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways from this deep dive. It seems clear our thoughts and feelings aren't just fluff. They have real, measurable effects on our biology, our health, our reality.
Absolutely fundamental. And the good news is we can change those patterns.
Yeah.
We can break free from past conditioning
Through awareness, noticing the thoughts and feelings.
through practices like meditation to get beyond the conscious mind and reprogram the subconscious.
And by intentionally choosing and feeling those elevated emotions. Gratitude, joy, love, feeling them now.
The power truly is within us. We don't need to wait for the outside world to change. We shift our inner world, our thoughts, our energy, our feelings, and become the creators of our desired future.
And this is crucial, knowing this isn't enough, right? Insight needs action.
100%.
Yeah.
The understanding is the map, but you still have to walk the path. It takes consistent practice, dedication, showing up for yourself day after day.
But the potential payoff is huge, and it's backed by some pretty compelling science now, especially with epigenetics showing we can influence our genes, maybe even our biological age.
The potential is immense, and the evidence is growing. We're truly powerful creators.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you've heard all this, maybe one specific habitual thought or one recurring negative feeling came to mind for you, something you recognized. Just consider that one pattern. What's one small, intentional step, just one thing you could do today to begin shifting it? To consciously choose something different and start creating a new possibility for yourself.
It starts with that one small step, taking the knowledge and putting it into practice.
Exactly. Don't just think about it. Start doing it.